Oh, we are so back. Arsenal score another 5 on the road. That's 11 goals in our last 2 trips to the London Stadium now. But it's not all positives, despite a brilliant attacking display. There are more injury concerns. We really can't catch a break this season, can we? You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast with me, Harry Symeou. Let's get into it. Hey, everybody. Happy Sunday. Hope you're all good. Hope you're all having a great weekend so far. Thank you so much for being with us, whether you're watching us live, whether you're watching this back on playback, or you're listening to us via your favorite podcast platform. It's great to have you as part of the Chronicles of a Gooner family. And thank you for lending me your support, even though I'm podcasting at the minute from a bedroom that's badly decorated with dodgy camera and basically the quality in terms of the production has just dipped a little bit recently. And I keep making apologies for that because I really do feel it myself. I'm getting really agitated and frustrated by it, but hopefully, fingers crossed, the new man cave, the new home of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast is not far away. Anyway, yeah, really, really good day, wasn't it? Really, really good trip to the London Stadium. There were a few negatives, as I mentioned in the intro, and we'll get into those and we'll address each of those things. But generally speaking, we talked about the need for Arsenal in the preview show to go out there and obviously get all 3 points first and foremost. But I talked quite a bit about the need for us to go on and put on another show, because with every show that we put on, with every convincing win that this team delivers, the more everybody looks at us and goes, you know what, this lot are back. And the more people look at us and go, this lot are back, the more they worry when they play against us, the more anxious, they feel, the more, what's the word I'm looking for here? The more of an aura we carry, and the more of an aura we carry, the less likely teams are to come into games feeling and believing that they can get something off of us. And that allows us to dominate from the very beginning. That plays on those anxieties that they may already have going into the game. And we can impose ourselves and do essentially what we've done to Nottingham Forest, what we've done to Sporting, and what we've done to West Ham United. And people keep saying it really is as simple as just having Martin Ødegaard back. And whilst I agree with that to a point, I don't want to let myself believe that. Like, I don't want to believe that one player can make such a difference, but he really, really does. And I touched on this in the match day reaction piece yesterday. Like, is it as simple as give Martin Ødegaard in those areas and all of a sudden you're productive? Or is it that he brings so much more? I think he brings so much more. I think he brings a composure. I think he brings vision. I think he brings ideas. But I also think he brings a discipline. And he makes sure that the standards that Mikel Arteta sets with regards to pressing, work rate, all of those things are adhered to at all times. The amount of times he goes off, he launches himself out of our midfield and into our attacking line to make sure that he can, begin the press. And, very quickly he turns around and he looks at everybody else and he's saying, come on, we need to press together. And he makes sure that there's that kind of synergy throughout the team. He is, as I've called him many, many times over the last couple of years on this podcast, Mikel Arteta's lieutenant on the pitch. He's Mikel Arteta's assistant manager on the pitch. And when you've got Jorginho in the team as well, another one of those players, we really, really are brilliant. And it's a joy to watch. And we're going to talk about Jorginho a little bit later on in the pod, because I really do want to give him his flowers. I don't think, he got a fair crack of the whip from some sections of the fan base when we signed him, but he's shown this incredible ability time and time again to be on the peripheries, to be on the sidelines, to be a bit part player, but when called upon, roll into the team as if he's been playing every minute of every game every single week. He's just really, really professional and a real great asset to this squad. Okay, let's say a few hellos, because plenty of you with us in the live chat. Good morning to Steve. Good morning to Damien, complaining about my punctuality. Nelson says, a few minutes late is an understatement. Yeah, I was late today. I'm not going to lie. What else have we got? Paul James says, is this going to start? Whoops. Was I that late? Bloody hell, I didn't even realize. What else have we got? Temiola says, why do West Ham always have a fire drill every time Arsenal come to the London Stadium? It certainly feels like that, doesn't it? It certainly does. Mario Romano says, morning, Harry. Heard you on the Arsenal app. Fair play, mate, and well done. The ref let so many challenges go, which is why they continue to go in on our players. This needs to stop. Thank you so much. Yes, I was on commentary duty yesterday for Arsenal alongside Gunners legend Nigel Winterburn. So if you watch the highlights on the Arsenal YouTube channel or via the Arsenal social media platforms, or you go on the club's website, watch the extended highlights or the full game back, it will be myself and Nigel Winterburn on commentary. And I really enjoyed it. What a game to get. 7 goals in the first half. It's kind of a commentator's dream. I wish they all went our way. They didn't. But yeah, tried my best to stay as professional as possible when West Ham pulled a couple back. But hey, thank you so much for that. Okay, let's begin with what happened pre-game, because we were disappointed by some news going into the match. You know, we'd heard Mikel Arteta in the press conference talking about Thomas Partey's availability and how the fact that he was available and feeling really good was allowing him to flourish and was allowing us as supporters to kind of see the best version of him. And so, of course, he was going to pick up a problem going into this game. And I think it must have been a really late decision to leave Thomas Partey out of the squad, because he was with the squad. You know, we saw him, arriving with the players in his tracksuit and everything. Alexander Zinchenko recently said that Mikel Arteta gets them to do that anyway, whether they're fit or not. But the fact that he was there, the fact that he was looking as though he was going to take part at that point suggests to me that maybe, it was a late decision that Mikel Arteta had to make on the Ghanaian's fitness. But it wasn't just Thomas Partey that was missing. It was Mikel Merino as well, who we were told was left out due to a knee problem. And that's not good news. To lose 2 midfield options is certainly not ideal. We lost Gabriel in the game when he was essentially punched in the face by Lucas Fabianski. And we lost Calafiori as well, who went off complaining of an injury. Saka had a kicking. Hopefully he's going to be okay, but he was taken off, given the game state and the stage that we were at. I think probably more so to protect him than anything else. But the problem is, guys, is that whenever we get some players back, we seem to lose others. And we're going into games and we're coming out of them like wounded soldiers. And yeah, you got to give your all and you got to give your everything. But, could we have... Look, I don't want to blame Mikel Arteta here. I don't want to point the finger at him, because he can't control the types of challenges that go in. He has no influence, no say over that. He can't control Thomas Partey picking up a muscular problem in training. He can't control Mikel Merino picking up a slight knee issue. Hopefully it's a slight knee issue. It's a knee issue is all we know. And I think Mikel Arteta would have been probably more frustrated than any of us yesterday, because I'd imagine that at 5-2 up, going into sort of 65, 70 minutes, he'd have wanted to make changes. He'd have wanted to make changes to protect some of his key players, given we've got Manchester United on Wednesday night and there's not much turnaround time. But when you have to make changes to Gabriel and Calafiori, for instance, because those changes are enforced upon you, then that throws your plan out of the window. And in the end, he got a couple of other players on. Jesus came on. Zinchenko was the one that replaced Calafiori. Raheem Sterling got on late on as well. But I think Mikel Arteta would have wanted to go into kind of protection / lockdown mode a little bit earlier than he did. And I say earlier, I think he had a plan at halftime with regards to what he wanted to do in that second half. And that plan was thrown off, is what I should say, by the fact that Gabriel had to go off and by the fact that Calafiori had to go off as well. But the start in terms of our performance was really strong. The atmosphere was pretty good at the London Stadium ahead of kickoff. The first few minutes, the crowd were on their feet. They were getting behind their team. They came into it off the back of a victory against Newcastle United up at St. James's Park, a big morale-boosting result for Julen Lopetegui's side. But I thought we did an excellent job of squeezing them up, making sure that they were stuck in their own half, not allowing them to play out. When they tried to play through us, we were snapping at their heels. We were closing down. We were pressing in unison. We did a really good job of that. And they tried on the odd occasion to catch us on the transition. And again, we were brilliantly set up and well equipped to deal with that. And it's not just about the players that you have on the pitch when you're dealing with transitions. It's not just about, how high your line is. It's about having players in the team that have the intelligence to read a situation before it develops and position themselves accordingly. And although we always look at Saliba and Gabriel in those instances, and we always think, well, you try and go over the top of us, those guys are going to win 9 out of 10 duels. Those guys have got plenty of pace across the ground. They don't mind being run back towards their own goal. They've got it all as centre-backs, really, as a pairing especially. I think the player that impressed me super a lot, is that even a phrase? Super a lot. The player that impressed me loads in that first half, based on his ability to snuff out transitions and stop them, was Jorginho. Because we often talk about him as being this guy who's like super technically gifted and really, really intelligent with great vision. But the criticism that's often thrown at him is, yeah, but he's not mobile enough. And if you leave him as the kind of base of the six, as the last man in certain situations, the last man of your midfield line, very often teams can get through onto your back four, and then you've got a problem. But I thought Jorginho's reading of what some of West Ham's attacks and moves forward were going to develop into was second to none, and his ability to then position himself accordingly and snuff out the danger was a joy to watch. We pinned them back. We were aggressive in our press. We were really, really good at suffocating West Ham United. And in the end, we got our opener after around about 10 minutes from a trademark Arsenal set piece. Gabriel is just elite from these situations, and him and Nicolas Jover's got to be the partnership in the league, the best partnership in the league at the minute, hasn't it? The way they kind of come together, the way that Jover's sort of set piece routines are then perfectly executed by not just the player delivering the corner, but obviously Gabriel, who seems to get on the end of so many. I think that's his 4th goal of the season now, which for a centre-back is pretty remarkable at this stage. The routine was different, though. And that's what impressed me most about this. We talk a lot about that kind of routine that we've seen fairly regularly this season, where we gather a bunch of players at the back post. Gabriel stands around about the penalty spot, and then we use those players at the back post to come across the goal to cause the kind of havoc that we need and to create sort of blocks, if you like, that opens up that lane for Gabriel to roll into. And when he does, you know that he's powerful. You know that he's physically very, very dominant. And you know that from that distance, if you get his head on the ball, he's probably going to score. But this time it was different. This time there was no Gabriel lurking on the penalty spot. He joined that pack at the far post. And it was a brilliant piece of movement from the back post towards the near post that allowed him to get on the end of it. And when he did, he was really, really good in terms of just guiding his header back across the goal and beating Lucas Fabianski. This was a different routine, and that's what makes this all the more impressive, because we're not, just stuck on one thing. Even though it's been working and nobody seems to have been able to suss it out, we turned up there, and I think West Ham would have expected Gabriel to be standing on the penalty spot. And when he wasn't, you look at it and you go, well, where's he going now? What's this going to look like? And rather than him arriving in the middle of the goal, he's arriving at the near post and he heads into the far corner. I think, you got to give Arsenal immense credit for being so imaginative and creative with these set piece routines, because as I keep saying, they're not always the same, and that takes a lot of work on the training ground. It throws off the opposition, who'd have watched lots and lots of clips, wouldn't they, of Arsenal and the way that they've been attacking set pieces, particularly using Gabriel. There was the doubt over whether he was going to be in the team, which obviously might have impacted West Ham's plans. How much did they look into defending Gabriel if they thought that he might not be playing? It's, there's so many facets to this. But what I will say is Nicolas Jover is brilliant at what he does, but the execution of these set pieces is fantastic. And I did hear some sort of murmurs from, the non-Arsenal supporting community suggesting that Jurrien Timber had fouled at the near post to kind of create that space for Gabriel. All he does is lean into the guy. That's no way on God's green earth a foul. It's a ridiculous claim to make. And on top of that, if you watch that goal back, which I've done this morning again, you will see that William Saliba's in a kind of lock. Like the guy's got his 2 arms underneath Saliba's armpits and he's sort of holding him back. So it's funny how people point out certain pushing and shoving inside the penalty area, but refuse to acknowledge other bits of it because it doesn't suit their agendas. It was a perfectly legal goal. It was a really well-worked set piece. And I was really, really pleased that Arsenal managed to find the breakthrough as early as they did, because it just, West Ham's confidence is fragile. Now, they're a side that, yes, they went and won at St. James's Park earlier in the week, and people were looking at them as a result of that and thinking, have they turned the corner under Julian Lopetegui, and should we be wary of them? Well, they haven't done enough in terms of results and performances for that confidence to be so high that a setback like that won't have an impact. And it certainly did have an impact, because West Ham went into their shell a little bit after that. But then it's on Arsenal to be the ruthless side that we know they're capable of being. It's on Arsenal to take it by the scruff of the neck and to go out there and take full advantage of a team that are, that are shaking, that are wobbling, that are starting to doubt themselves, that are concerned, that are worried. So, yeah, we went on to really dominate after that. And the second goal came from some beautiful combination play involving Ødegaard and Saka down the right-hand side. And it's a really, really interesting bit of movement, because if you watch it back again, what you'll see is Saka starts really, really wide. He's the one that works the ball back into Martin Ødegaard. And when Ødegaard takes a touch, I think West Ham get caught out by Kai Havertz's position. He's in that half space. And then all of a sudden, Saka from out to in just darts in behind. And when the ball comes to him, he's got the composure to take it on the knee and then just roll it across the face of the goal, where, let's be honest, Arsenal players were queuing up. Havertz was there. Trossard was there. In the end, it was the Belgian that put it in, the 2-0, and Arsenal are in dreamland. Then Arsenal earned themselves a penalty, which puts them 3 goals to the good. Martin Ødegaard was given the penalty by Bukayo Saka. The Arsenal winger talked about that post-match. He said that Ødegaard wanted to take it. They have shared penalties between them in recent times, so that wasn't a complete surprise to me. And they often do that thing where someone pretends to be the taker before passing the ball onto the other one. A really, really well-dispatched penalty from Odegaard. But again, if you watch how that move comes about, and I talk loads on this podcast about the need for our wingers to receive the ball early. Because if you receive the ball early, you get to take on your man more often than not before the opposition have the chance to double up on you. And if you watch the earlier stages of that move back again, what you will see is that there's a first-time pass from Odegaard to Saka that gives him the opportunity to take on his man 1v1. That gives him the opportunity to take on Emerson. And by the time Paqueta gets back to help out, Saka's already beaten Emerson. He's already inside. He's already in the danger zone. Paqueta panics, swings a leg at him, catches the bottom of his foot, and it's a penalty from which Arsenal put themselves 3 goals to the good. But the first time pass from Odegaard is the key, because if he takes an extra touch, which most players, 9 out of 10 players would, if he takes an extra touch and then finds Bukayo Saka, he's given Lucas Paqueta the time to get back and support Emerson Palmieri, which means that they make it a lot more difficult for Saka to jink his way inside and get into the position from which he ultimately wins the spot kick. So that sort of importance of getting the ball to your wingers early, putting them in those 1v1 situations that they want to be in, was on display there. And I'm going to talk about another Ødegaard first-time pass for the 4th goal, because people will talk about Havertz's run. Brilliant. Could Kilman have done better in terms of judging the flight of the ball as it went over the top of him? Sure. Trossard's pass was excellent, and what probably went under the radar a little bit was that was a pass played with his weaker left foot, by the way, because, again, he wanted to play it early, and playing things early is really, really important. But if you go back one pass before, again, the ball's coming out of the air, and Martin Ødegaard don't take a touch to bring it under control and then lay it off to Leandro Trossard. No. His first touch is to put it into the path of Leandro Trossard, whose first touch is to dink it over the top of the West Ham United defense. First time passing, the key, because you don't give anybody time to set themselves. And in goes Kai Havertz, and he finished like someone who scores goals for fun. Brilliant goal. So Arsenal 4-0 up, dreaming, cruising towards, another statement victory. And then all of a sudden, West Ham start to just find a way back into the game, albeit temporarily. And it was a really, really good pass, by the way, from Carlos Soler that found Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Wan-Bissaka finishes really, really well, by the way. I don't think it's too often in his career that he scored in back-to-back Premier League games, if at all, by the way. But he makes a really, really good run in behind Leandro Trossard, and he slots it home at the near post to beat David Raya. Good West Ham goal. But from an Arsenal perspective, I think you got to look at Leandro Trossard there. Now, I'm not saying that we should hammer the guy because, and excuse the pun, I know we were at West Ham. I'm not saying we should hammer the guy because, he switched off and it happens to everybody. If everybody was perfect, this is something that Nigel Winterburn said to me yesterday on commentary. If everybody was perfect all of the time, there'd never be any goals. So, you can't expect that. You can want it, you can demand it, but you got to be realistic about what you're going to get. And for me, Leandro Trossard just a little bit unaware of Wan-Bissaka's positioning initially, and once he figures out where he is, it's too late for him to step into the space and close out the pass. I do think, and this is not to again throw shade at Leandro Trossard, but I do think that Gabriel Martinelli deals with that situation, because I just think defensively he's a lot more switched on. He's a lot more conscious of his defensive duties than Leandro Trossard. And I think that's one of the big reasons that Martinelli gets as much game time as he does, even when, we've been looking at him in the past and saying, well, it's not quite happening for him at the minute. He's not scoring. He's not assisting. He's not making the right decisions in the final third. It's his all-round contribution, I think, that Mikel Arteta is often sort of prioritizing. And I think that in that situation, he probably is a little bit more alert because he seems to have a bit more of a defensive instinct than Leandro Trossard. And if he does, then that goal doesn't happen and West Ham don't find a way back into the game. They then got a second. And I must admit, at that point, I had to sort of remind myself, West Ham have got a second and the atmosphere's turned. And, this could get not ugly, but it could get a little bit uncomfortable for us at this stage. It could get a little bit uncomfortable. But I had to remind myself that, no, you know what? Yeah, okay. Maybe this isn't ideal and maybe I'm feeling a little bit less positive than I was 2 minutes ago. But we've still got a 2-goal lead. Like, this isn't them cutting the deficit down to 1. This is them getting themselves into a game where they were essentially dead and buried. So, yeah, okay, something positive for West Ham. I think some of them in the stadium might have thought, hold on a minute, this isn't over. Let's not count our chickens just yet. But I had to remind myself, as I'm sure many Arsenal fans did at halftime, that we were still in a really, really commanding position. The thing with the second goal was, look, let me take, first of all, nothing away from Emerson, because that is an outstanding free kick. Onto the bottom of the crossbar, into the back of the net. David Raya is not saving that. Nobody in the world is saving that, I don't think. It was that good of a free kick. Superb, brilliant, brilliant West Ham goal. But was it a free kick in the first place? Of course it bloody wasn't. Declan Rice makes one of the cleanest challenges you'll ever see. And my huge frustration around this and around that decision is that, okay, A, it could have led to something that was significant in the way that the game went, i.e., had West Ham then gone and found the third before halftime, we'd have been saying, hold on, that goal really did spark things into life and give them that little bit more belief. And actually, it should have never stood. And yeah, we'd have been complaining about it a lot more. But I'm still going to complain about it because I think you have to be consistent in these things. The reason I'm going to complain about it is because Anthony Taylor was right there. This took place right underneath his nose. This wasn't something that happened at the other end of the pitch. This wasn't something that he was trying to play catch up to. This wasn't something that there was a lot of players in his way and he couldn't see. It was none of that. This was Anthony Taylor being incompetent. And how he managed to spot, and listen, it was a penalty, the foul on Bukayo Saka, but how he managed to spot that contact, which I've got to be honest, I had to see a replay to figure out. How he was able to spot that contact, but then not spot that Declan Rice clearly got the ball then, is beyond me. It's beyond me. But anyway, take nothing away from the free kick taker. Fantastic goal. And at 4-2, I wouldn't say I was worried. But you started to look at it and you go, what a shame. Because, I beg your pardon, you start to say, what a shame, because we were in complete control. The West Ham fans inside the London Stadium must have been fearing a repeat of last season where we turned up and beat them 6-0. And all of a sudden, they've made the scoreline look a little bit more respectable. And there's a glimmer of hope. And there's a chance that if they come out in the second half and score the first goal, that this could get very, very uncomfortable for the Arsenal. At half-time, when we were speaking in the studio covering the game, and I'm going to mention the fifth goal in a second. But at halftime, when we were speaking, I think that was really, really the kind of point that I think people were sort of caught up on was, they're going to fight back. But actually, hold on. we've still got a really good cushion. And obviously that cushion improved and increased when we added the fifth deep into stoppage time. And listen, again, at the time, I couldn't tell. I couldn't tell that Fabianski got nothing on the ball. I certainly thought he made contact with Gabriel, but I thought it was maybe a follow through. I thought he got something on the ball and then followed through and took Gabriel out. They say to goalkeepers, don't they? When you come out, take it all. But he literally punched the Arsenal defender in the face and got very, very little, if anything at all, on the ball. And credit to Anthony Taylor there, who again was hawk-eyed. And that's the big frustration, right? Hawk-eyed in certain situations and blind as a bat in others, if you want to put it that way. But, the penalty was given. Bukayo Saka steps up. And that goal came at such an important point. Because any hope, any momentum that West Ham United were building up was gone. It was gone. You could feel the atmosphere just drain from everybody inside London Stadium of a West Ham persuasion. And for me, I said that at 4-2, I was still feeling relatively okay. A little bit worried about where the next goal might go, but I was still feeling relatively okay. But at 5-2, I thought to myself, what am I worried about? We've got a 3-goal cushion. We're the much better team. We're in control here. We've got the capability of scoring more. And I remember, again, another conversation that we had at halftime was, how many goals are they going to be in the second half then? 7 in the first period. How many are we going to get in the second half? And I remember turning around to my colleague and saying, none. None. I think that this is the type of game that is just going to fizzle out now. And that's exactly what happened. The only disappointments of the second half were, of course, that, as I mentioned, Gabriel, having undergone, I'm assuming, an assessment at the break, was unable to continue. He was a doubt going into the game as well, so I wasn't hugely surprised to see him come off. And then, of course, we lost Ricardo Calafiori, who seemed to be holding his groin as he went off, and that's really bad news. The importance of Calafiori and White, Calafiori and Timber is huge at the minute, because we're without White. And we're not just without White, but we're without Tomiyasu as well. I don't really want us to get back to a place where we're playing Kivior at left back. I don't think Kivior was bad yesterday, by the way, when he came on. I thought he was a little bit unlucky with some of the decisions that went against him. For instance, I thought he'd done a brilliant piece of defensive work to stop Jared Bowen and won the ball cleanly and was pulled up for a foul, which I thought was totally wrong. Again, from the unhawk-eyed Anthony Taylor, who only seemed to turn it on. Maybe he sort of put his glasses on for certain decisions and didn't have them on for others. I don't know. Maybe the contact lenses were in and out. Who knows? But yeah, I just don't want us to get back to that place. Look, I look at Ricardo Calafiori, and myself and Mike talked about it on a recent pod, and I said, not totally convinced by him defensively, and that remains the case. But he does allow us to play in that bold, brave way that we want to. And we've been talking a lot recently about Arsenal maybe just going into their shell a little bit in the absence of some key players, changing their style, their game plan, and playing a more pragmatic game that just really wasn't suiting us and was allowing other teams into the game. Paul James makes a point in the chat, and it's a good point. Kieran Tierney is fit, but I just don't see there being any way back for him, really, if I'm being honest. I think he's in the side at the moment, as in terms of the squad, because we had injuries. We had another couple of first-team players have to drop out of the squad the other day in Partey and Marino. Would he be on the bench if those two were available? Probably not. I think there's just a lack of senior players available in certain areas right now. And so, yeah, he got the opportunity to be on the bench. And I think, Arsenal are essentially putting the guy in the shop window, right? They're probably going to move him on in January, if we're being honest. But yeah, the game fizzled out in the second half. You wanted to see Jesus have an impact when he came on. He tried, didn't quite work for him. Raheem Sterling was a little bit underwhelming for me, if I'm being completely honest. There were a couple of times where he got the ball on that right-hand side, and I wanted to see him go at the defense, and he just didn't. He just held back and will put his foot on the ball and roll it back to someone. And speaking to Nigel Winterburn about that during the commentary, he was kind of defensive of Raheem Sterling. And he said, well, your team are cruising. You just want to keep the ball. But no, I want to see Raheem Sterling go and try and make an impact. I want to see him do something that, convinces us as fans, but also the management that, he's ready to help this team, because Mikel Arteta spoke a big game about him in the press conference. He said, it's my fault that he's had so little minutes and all the rest of it. But to me, he's not delivered, man. And again, it was a very low risk, potentially high reward signing. and he still might deliver, and he still might have a significant enough impact to justify that signing. But at the end of the day, right now, it's not happening for him. And I don't want to go too big on that, because we should be celebrating a win, a very good win, a very comprehensive win. You know, that's 13 goals in 3 away games, in 3 games, I beg your pardon now, for Arsenal, 10 in the last 2 away games. You got to be happy. You got to be pleased. The one dampener, I would say, is the injury problems. And we're hoping that, you know, those players are going to be okay. Big game coming up on Wednesday night against Manchester United. We win that as well, and all of a sudden, you know, we're looking good again. And we can, over the course of between now and the end of January, I genuinely believe this, work our way back into this title race. Big game coming up at the, I was going to say at the Etihad, but it's at Anfield, of course, between Liverpool and Manchester City later today. And we're going to bring you a bonus podcast reacting to that. We did a thing a little while ago. Haven't done many. I think I've done 2 called Harry Reacts. Very imaginatively named, as you can tell. A lot of creative thought went into that. But someone said I should change it to Symeou Says, which sounds a lot better. I think we'll do that. But anyway, we'll bring you some kind of reaction in the form of a bonus podcast. It won't be long, 15, 20 minutes maximum. But we'll bring you some reaction to that game, because I think it's significant for us. I'd prefer that Manchester City win. I know a lot of people would prefer that there's a draw. I think that Liverpool need to be knocked down a peg or 2. And I think that given they're the favourites going into this game, given it's at Anfield and all the rest of it, I think if Manchester City, as out of sorts as they've been in recent times, were to turn up and turn them over, I think that would cause some internal questions at Liverpool. It would cause the players to look at themselves, and Arne Slot to look at himself and think, bloody hell, we've been in great form. Manchester City have been dreadful. Yet even at their worst, they've turned up here and they've beaten us. Like, the psychological impact that result could have, I think, is more significant than, you know, the point situation between ourselves and Manchester City at this moment. So, yeah, I think I would just about prefer a Manchester City victory. A draw would be good too, because as I said, in the lead up to this game, it's either both of them drop points or one of them drop points. And either way, it's win-win for us. And it could only be win-win if we won our game, and we did. So, you know, happy days in that sense. Sit back, kick back, enjoy it, relax, watch it, and see what you think of the 2 sides. But yeah, we'll bring you some reaction to that. Just to kind of summarize on the Arsenal performance at West Ham. You know, people will say, oh, well, we only played well for 45 minutes. And is that a concern? Is that a worry? No, because when you play as well as we did in that first 45 minutes, you earn the right to take your foot off the gas in the second half. You have a responsibility, I think, as a manager at this level, knowing that you play Manchester United on Wednesday. You have a responsibility to make sure that you manage the game right without overly exerting yourselves. The game was won at the break. The game was won after half an hour. You know, the game was won very early on. It's natural that you take your foot off the gas a little bit. You don't want to allow complacency to creep in. I look at the goals that we conceded, and people will say, well, we gave West Ham a route back into the game. I think we gave them a little sniff for their first goal, for the Wan-Bissaka goal, by not tracking Wan-Bissaka's run well enough. But it's still an outstanding pass from Carlos Soler and a really good finish from the fullback. So it wasn't us gifting it to them, in my opinion. It was them earning it by doing some really good stuff. And ultimately, you know, that's elite level football. You come against teams that have got quality, that are able to produce their own moments of magic. And that's what West Ham did. And the second goal, it's an outstanding free kick. It's not a gift to them. The only person that's gifted it to him is Anthony Taylor. Nobody in Arsenal colours, because that's never a foul in a million years. But we earned the right, as I say, to allow that second half to just play out in the way that it did. Not too much drama. If you watch the extended highlights on Arsenal.com, I think the first 8 minutes of the 10 are based on the first half. And then I think there's about a minute and a half of highlights from the second half. And I think they probably scraped the barrel, the editors, to find those highlights. Because when I was on my way home, I was thinking, what are the highlights of that second half? Like, really and truly. But anyway, another big win for Arsenal on the road. A big game coming up against Manchester United at the time of recording this. And of course, there are plenty of games due to take place in the Premier League today. So I'm under no illusions that it's probably going to look different by the end of the day. But Arsenal move up into second place. 6 points behind Liverpool. Manchester City and Liverpool play one another later. Chelsea are in action. Villa are in action. Spurs are in action. So there's a lot of games to come today. And obviously the table's probably going to look a little bit different by the end of the day. But to move up into second place and close the deficit on Liverpool, you know, yes, they've got a game in hand, but all you can do when you're the chaser is put that pressure on them. All you can do is do your bit and make sure that when they walk out at Anfield this afternoon, they are feeling the heat. And, you know, if Manchester City were to peg them back and all of a sudden that really commanding lead of 9 points goes down to 6, then you start to think that maybe there's a title race to be had after all. But anyway, I will see you all a little bit later on then. We'll do some sort of reaction to the Liverpool-Manchester City game. So stay tuned for that. If I could ask you, if you haven't done so already, leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel and all the rest of it. And I will see you on the next one. Until then, take care of yourselves. Goodbye.